for a taste of some of the area's finest artists. Join us next on Carolina People here at Collector's Cafe. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're in Myrtle Beach at Collector's Cafe and Art Gallery. We're focused on many of the artists that are displayed in this fall's art show, and we're visiting with three good friends of Collector's Cafe, in particular Jack Thompson. Jack, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. My pleasure, Greg.
Very definitely. Although you're not displayed, none of your photographs are displayed in the fall art show. As a good friend of Collector's, we wanted to get you in to highlight much of your history here in Myrtle Beach, both as the unofficial Myrtle Beach historian as well as an artist in your own right. So thanks so much for being here. Can we talk a little bit about yourself? Are you originally from the area?
Well, no, well, actually, the story goes that I hitchhiked into Myrtle Beach at age 13.
13.
With two little friends of mine from Greenville, South Carolina. And they were anxious to see the ocean. I was anxious to get a job. So they ran to the ocean, and I ran to a photo booth in the pavilion and asked for a job. I got the job, provided I could start immediately. So it took me a while to see the ocean, but I got my job, I got my career at the photo stand in the pavilion.
That's amazing, at the pavilion.
At the pavilion.
Well, not to age you, Jack, but to try to figure out, you were age 13, I sure don't want to put those years together, but what year was that?
That was 1951.
Is that right? 1951. Well, you definitely kept your youth very well. It was the summer of 51?
Summer of 51.
What was Myrtle Beach like in 1951? Did a lot of folks know about Myrtle Beach even?
Well, actually, the trip to Myrtle Beach took 2 days. My little friends and I thought we'd be here in a couple of hours. We didn't know where Myrtle Beach was. We'd just heard all the great stories about the fun, the music, the girls, the suds, the sand. And we just struck out from Myrtle Beach. Most of the people coming on the highway during that time were farmers going a few miles down the road. So we got a lot of rides in the back of a lot of pickup trucks with the chickens and the hogs and things like that. So it took us 2 days to get here because Myrtle Beach was just really not on the map.
At age 13, you arrived. I think you said you got a job at the pavilion. What was that? What was that job?
There was a photo stand in the pavilion that made the little 2-minute souvenir photographs. We had a bench with a half moon that said Miss Myrtle Beach. The girls would sit on the bench and pose. We had a jail scene that we'd drag in, and it said Myrtle Beach Jail, and all the kids on the house parties would stick their head through and say, "Hi, Mom, I'm in the Myrtle Beach Jail." And I thought that was exciting, and I worked at that job for 4 or 5 years.
Is that right? Was that owned locally?
The one and only studio in Myrtle Beach during that time was Skip's Studio, owned by Dwight Lamb. And when summer ended, my brother and I, we didn't want to go home. We told our parents, if you'll let us stay, we'll go to school. And they liked that idea, provided we had a guardian, and Mr. Dwight Lamb became our guardian to look after us. And after Labor Day, when everything was shut down and nobody was here, so to speak, we went to work up in Skip's studio after school. Proud to say we both finished Myrtle Beach High School.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Jack, when did you first figure out that you had an artistic sense of perception, or that the sense of perception was there for you to truly show this art through photography?
Well, immediately, I can go back to the 9th grade when I started in, and Mr. Lamb, Dwight Lamb, the only cameras available at that time were the big speed graphic cameras, almost big as I was. So he taught me how to use that camera, and his one lesson to me was to try to create a photograph that nobody had ever seen from an angle that was rarely ever seen. And so I began to pursue that.
Do you have a favorite subject, Jack? When folks think of your works in particular, do they think of anything? I know I was told by a mutually very close friend of both of ours that you're great with children. And if there was one thing that people did know about Jack Thompson, or may not know about Jack Thompson, it's that he's an amazing grandfather. But is that a particular subject, children?
Well, in the early days, immediately out of high school, I did take a little sabbatical with a large chain department store and helped them set up a baby picture promotion throughout their department stores, actually throughout the country. And in 4 years, tabulated, I shot close to 1 million children in photographs.
Close to 1 million children.
That's a lot of experience.
That's amazing.
And doing that on a day-to-day basis, going into major cities, Levittown, Long Island, Chicago, and Dallas. On a given day, I'd photograph 1,500, 2,000 children.
Jack, as a professional photographer, I guess you display your photos around the country, or here in Myrtle Beach, or any being displayed other than in your local studio?
Well, fortunately, a lot of the restaurants, hotel lobbies, and a lot of the banks have my classic photographs of old Myrtle Beach.
You know, there's so many things I want. Kyle, Jack, we're going to have to get you back in another time to talk about your position with the Myrtle Beach Train Depot as chairman of the commission to restore the depot, to talk about your activities as co-author of Growing Up with Shoeless Joe, I believe with your brother. I really want to ask about what's a day like with Jack Thompson, waking up in the morning for viewers right now who'd be watching this interview, knowing that at 8 o'clock at the end of the interview, where are you headed from here? What's a day like? But real quick, can we just talk about a couple of the shots that are here behind us? One of your most famous pieces, I believe, is recognized in the bottom middle there.
The Ocean Forest Hotel, wonderful hotel built by the Woodside brothers from Greenville, South Carolina. In 1928, opened in 1930, actually opened at the fall of the stock market. So the hotel actually fell on hard times, reverted back to the Burroughs family, and had a wonderful career, though, of conventions, entertained hundreds of thousands of famous people during its 40-year operation. I was fortunate to grow up in that hotel almost every night during school, photographing conventions.
Jack Thompson, the unofficial Myrtle Beach historian, capturing Myrtle Beach for more than 5 decades. Jack, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Stay tuned for more Carolina People coming up next. Good morning. Welcome back to Carolina People. This morning we're at Collector's Cafe and Art Gallery in Myrtle Beach. We're focused on the Fall Art Show that kicked off last Wednesday, and we're visiting with one of the 3 friends of Collector's Cafe, music director Tim Koch. Tim, thanks so much for being here with us this morning.
Glad to be here, Greg. Thanks.
A great week. Obviously, as you know, we've been focused on many of the artists that are displaying their fine art at the cafe for the Fall Art Show that kicked off last Wednesday, but there were 3 particularly good friends of the cafe that we wanted to get in to highlight, who are artists in their own right. You as the music director for the Carolina Master Chorale and the South Carolina Symphonic Chorale in Columbia. I believe I got that right.
You sure did.
I hope I did. It's you've got you wear a heck of a lot of hats, Tim, and to think through all you go through. Can we talk real quick about yourself? Are you originally from the area?
I'm from Illinois originally. I've been in the South about 10 years. It was my first 30 years in Illinois, and then I studied in Western New York. Spent some time in Mississippi at the University of Southern Mississippi, and then I'm now in my 4th year here in South Carolina.
You've always studied music?
Yeah, music's been my whole life. Both my parents are musicians, and so it's been in my blood a long time. I'm the only one of 3 children to have followed it professionally, but it's not something that I do. I think it's something that I am, and so along with baseball, another passion of mine, it's just something that I do every single day.
I guess it's difficult to ask you, Tim. A number of guests I'd ask, what did you do before you committed to art or music as a full-time career? But really, you've been, as you said, music's not a career to you. It's
I fought it a little bit when I was younger. I went to school as a business major, but I was a miserable failure at that, and so I discovered that music could be not just something that my parents did, but it was something that really was pretty deeply embedded, and something that I had a pretty deep-seated love for, and a little bit of talent at, maybe.
And you said how long have you been in, you said you've been in South Carolina for 4 years.
I'm in my 4th year.
How long have you been in the Grand Strand area?
I've really just moved to the Grand Strand in this past year, but I've been working here now since I came to South Carolina. I've been on the road. My jobs are part-time. They sort of add together to make full-time occupation, but I had lived in Charleston and had driven to do my work at Myrtle Beach. But as my work grew here and as my organization became more and more successful and had more and more goals, it appeared to me that I could be a lot more successful if I got integrated into the community and got to know people better and so forth. So they've made a real commitment to me, the organization, the Carolina Master Chorale, and I'm happy to return that commitment by moving to town.
Very definitely.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I think we think of folks oftentimes traveling on the road. You were based in Charleston for a number of years, traveling to Columbia to direct the South Carolina Symphonic Chorale, traveling to Myrtle Beach to to conduct the Carolina Master Chorale. The amazing commitment there to travel virtually all over the state in 3 very important regions.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I can do some of my work in the car with my CD player. So I hear a lot of music that way, and I use the radio a little bit too. But I spend that time, I think, pretty productively.
Speaking of being in the car listening to CDs, do you have any favorite types of music, Tim?
Well, I like a wide variety of music. Of course, I'm very well trained in the classical areas. You know, I'm interested in jazz. I'm interested in top 40. I'm interested in the rock and roll that I grew up with and all that sort of thing. But I have a particular passion for classical music, and I think there are fewer people in my generation that know a lot about it. And so I enjoy introducing that kind of music to my friends, people who might not have been exposed to it like past generations have been exposed to it. Yeah.
Is there any musician in particular that's inspired you, Tim?
Well, there are a couple. I went to school with a woman named Dawn Upshaw. We went to school at Illinois Wesleyan University, and I've watched her become one of the world's greatest sopranos. She sings all over the world and has many recordings, has won Grammy Awards and so forth. And I think in my own field specifically, Leonard Bernstein, I think, is the world's, or at least the greatest American musician we've ever had. Extraordinary, versatile musician. Also a political activist, a person who broke down social barriers. He was a great teacher of young people, wonderful conductor, composer on Broadway, classical composer, just an extraordinary variety of things that he was skilled at. You know, his father wouldn't give him piano lessons when he was younger. One of the things I think about when I think about my commitment to music education, his father wouldn't give him the money to go for piano lessons, and asked about that in later life. His father said, "How was I to know my son would grow up to be Leonard Bernstein?"
That's amazing.
Yeah. So he's been. I've studied his career and studied his work. Wrote a dissertation on his work, and I think of him as a model for lots of things that I like to do in my own life. Yeah.
That's very interesting, Tim. Was there any particular event that occurred in your life that prompted you to become a music director?
Bernstein talks about this thing called the special world, and people who have been involved in music performance, I think, know this moment when the music becomes sort of all-consuming and you can kind of get lost inside of it, and it has a sort of transformational effect. And I had that experience a number of times, but the first time was when I was an undergraduate at Illinois Wesleyan University, and I was in my college choir, and when the music just sort of takes you over, and it's a very kind of euphoric effect. And I think that was a changing moment for me when I decided I wouldn't be a musician just because my parents had been, but because it was something I really wanted to do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You call that Bernstein
special world.
The special world.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're not always in the special world.
No. You have to work hard to be there, and you have to be involved in a pretty good performance for it to work too, or else you get distracted by everything that's going wrong.
Yeah. We've got a couple of minutes. Can we talk real quick about the Carolina Master Chorale?
Yeah, sure.
Since we're here in Myrtle Beach.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a growing organization of about 75 singers currently. We have goals for 4 or 5 years down the road. We'd like it to be 120 singers. We sing frequently with the Long Bay Symphony Orchestra. We're a willing partner with them. We gather together with my friends from Columbia and the South Carolina Symphonic Chorale and collaborate. And we do primarily classical music, not exclusively. We have a 4-concert season. We sell season tickets, and we do a variety of music throughout the year. This year we'll also be taking a tour to Italy. We've been invited to perform at the Siena International Choral Festival in Italy. So we have a pretty wide mission. We're very committed to education. We've recently started the Carolina Youth Chorale, which brings together Horry County's finest high school students from 7 different high schools and gives them an opportunity to perform with orchestra. We give concerts in the schools. We do civic functions, sing at the lighting of the Christmas tree, at the inductions to the South Carolina Hall of Fame. So it's a very, very active group. It's the Grand Strand's oldest performing arts organization.
Is that right?
That's true. It was started as the Community Choral Society only 20 years ago, but the arts are young in this community, the performing arts, and so it's a very fertile field, and we have excellent leadership. I have 2 colleagues, the director of the Carolina Youth Chorale, Norman McQueen, and my accompanist, Andy Fowler, who are very well-trained musicians. Our current president, Larry Wilson, is a very committed volunteer, and we think we're going to get this organization moving forward.
We got to wrap up, Tim, but if someone wanted to get a copy of the schedule or buy tickets, how would they go about
we'd love to have them call our office, and we have office hours in the afternoons 12 to 3, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and the office phone number is 843-444-5774.
Dr. Tim Koch, music director for the Carolina Master Chorale and the South Carolina Symphonic Chorale in Columbia. Carolina Master Chorale is a particular focus today and going forward. Give that number a call, find out when the next performance is, and get out to support the longest running
performing arts organization, right,
in the Grand Strand. That's amazing. Yeah. Stay tuned for more Carolina People coming up next. Good morning. Welcome back to Carolina People. This morning we're at Collectors Cafe and Art Gallery in Myrtle Beach. We're focused on the fall art show that kicked off last Wednesday, and we're visiting with one of the friends of Collectors, Grant Singleton. Grant, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Very definitely. As you know, we've been focused on the fall art show, and a number of the artists, as well as the owners of Collectors and their day manager. But I wanted to have an opportunity to highlight yourself and Tim Cook and Jack Thompson, who mean so much as artists in your own right, have been within the area for a heck of a long time, and wanted to talk about yourself a little bit. Are you originally from the area?
Born and raised in Conway, lived in Conway and Myrtle Beach all of my adult life, all of my life, really, the two together. Practiced law in Conway and Myrtle Beach for 35 years. Retired 18 years ago. Live in Myrtle Beach on the ocean front now.
Very close to Collectors.
Yeah.
Do you get over here often?
Yes, quite frequently.
Quite a bit. That's great. Well, you could almost walk over here. I know you'd stressed to me that art is strictly a hobby for you, but was there a point in life where you figured out that you really wanted to commit virtually full-time to this hobby?
Well, I involved myself with some painting and drawing when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. Then I never felt that I had time again until I retired. And about 6 years ago, I started painting, and then I went down to Brook Green. They offered some sculpture classes, and I took a couple of those. One under Ken Smith, and who is a renowned sculptor here. Mm-hmm. And I took stone carving under him, and I took course in clay modeling, which is cast in hydrocal ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Grant, do you have a favorite medium?
Well, in sculpting, no, I like direct carving from stone, as well as I like clay modeling, which would be cast in bronze ultimately.
Okay, it's cast in bronze ultimately. Mm-hmm. Well, so many, oftentimes when folks think of sculpting, I don't think people understand everything that goes through, and a little bit later we want to talk about how you go through one of your favorite pieces, but is there a subject that you like to focus on in particular?
Well, I seem to have kind of settled down on portraits, but I'm not going to do that exclusively. I've done portraits of 4 of my grandchildren and my daughter. I have 2 more to go. They are 2 more grandchildren. they're hanging in their homes. And I do that, work in the medium of pastels in that. But I've done watercolor landscapes and also oil.
So you both paint and sculpt?
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you've been doing this almost exclusively over the last 6 years, you said?
Not well, in between business matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just as a hobby.
When did you figure out that you wanted to be an artist? Was there anything in particular that prompted any event?
When I was in grammar school and high school, I liked to paint and draw, and I did some things that are still around. And then I didn't take it up until about 6 years ago again.
You talked about some of the paintings you've done that are hanging up in the living rooms, I guess, of a family and some friends. Are there any locations where you're exhibiting your art other than in families' homes?
No, it's been exhibited. Well, I've exhibited my sculpture at Brook Green. All of it's been there in different shows. I've also exhibited in Ashe County, North Carolina Museum in West Jefferson, and I'll be exhibiting there again in the spring.
Or do you think you'll be expanding into other mediums at any point?
Yes, what I've done so far is just to find out if I thought I was any good. So I plan to get a little bit serious about it.
Well, I know that one of the pieces, I believe you said at Brook Green Gardens, there are a number of your sculptures that have achieved awards. I think there was a tiger that achieved am I correct, a curator's award?
All of these were in student exhibits, but they had a lot of good pieces in there. Tom's mother was in there. Tom was in there. Tom Davis. The tiger was there. Won the curator's award. I had a stone piece in alabaster which came in second place in the People's Award, and then my favorite piece is Jimmy D'Angelo's bust, which was first place in the exhibit it was in.
That's perfect. Well, let's talk about that bust. Can you tell us the process that goes along in producing a piece like that?
Well, you start with a skeleton called an armature, which I devised myself, sometimes built out of wood, sometimes out of wire, sometimes out of different metals. I use plumbing pipes. And you start with the head in this case, and put a base of foam to conserve clay, and then as the head developed, put some more foam in the shoulders, and then you put foam in what was going to be the hat, all to conserve clay. And this goes through and where you develop it, and you finally put his hat on, then the entire hat gets on there. And then when you get through with the clay, you put green soap on it as a separator, and then you throw plaster of Paris all over it and make a mold. Then you dig the clay out of the mold after you separate it, and then you put the mold back together, and you pour hydrocal in, which is a medium in which Jimmy's bust is right now. It'll eventually be bronzed at a foundry, which will use molten bronze. So that's kind of how we get there. And then I had a couple of shots of Jimmy himself as the bust was in his final stages in the clay product, where he was sitting beside the bust, which makes a right interesting comparison.
And the bust was completed when?
The final casting in hydrocal was actually finished about 4 months after Jimmy died, but he saw it. He thought it was finished when he saw it, and he wanted to have a little, reception, which we did after he died. But he saw it and he liked it. Last time he saw it, he walked in my garage. He'd been sitting for me for 3 months. I started out with photographs, working from photographs, and then he sat for 3 months. But last time he came in, he said, "Good morning, James." So he liked his bust.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. I was delighted he could get to see it.
That must have been a great feeling. Grant Singleton, originally from Conway, who's lived here in Myrtle Beach for many years, an attorney by trade, someone who's given up much of that trade to focus on real estate, as well as to focus on this art, which has now become a very major hobby in his life. Grant Singleton, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Definitely. Stay tuned for more Carolina People coming up next. And don't forget the Fall Art Show here at Collectors Cafe in Myrtle Beach till the end of the year. And we want to send a big thanks out to Sharon Simmons, Tommy Davis, and Mike Smith for making this week such a big success.